another edition of Beyond the Backstage Pass. I am your host, Vince Edwards. You may know me from Sound Image Productions. I also have a couple closed roadie groups on Facebook, one called Death by Loadout and the other one called The Backstage Pass. Here with me this evening is my good friend and brother from another mother, co-host, Kyle Thomas. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing great, Vinny. Good to see you.
It's good to see you. You know, it's funny, we were sitting here and the song came on, the Backstage Pass song. Was it called CSR or something like that?
I don't know.
It has a name. It's in the credits.
Okay.
Mikey dug this up for us, and I used to be pretty whatever about it, but now I actually really look forward to it. I think it's a pretty good
We
little
do
song.
the air drums at the end of the show and everything. It's pretty funny.
Yeah. I'm always doing the leads, you know, because air guitar goof. But yeah, what's up, brother?
Not much. I just want to say thank you to Eric Simnacher for last week's show. I fucking love that gentleman. He's full of amazing stories.
Yeah.
Local friends. He's turned on, like I said last week, a lot of my really good friends in the industry in Local 16 and 134.
That's
so,
right. Yeah.
Much love for him, and I think he's going back out on the road, so we're going to wish him luck on the road.
Yeah. He's doing that comedy tour thing. I won't even try Sebastian something, but I guess he's a big deal. But it's a tricky, name that I would destroy.
Well, he said he loves it.
Yeah,
so
he said he's getting paid to laugh,
thing.
and he's done 3 tours with him, so he's on Netflix and stuff. So I guess it's a great thing, and I'm super stoked for Eric. I know they'll bring him out on Madonna to do their work. It's just you want the guy that does well at what he does. That's the guy. Yeah, good guy, and he's just a sweetheart.
Absolutely.
It was a pleasure having him on.
Talking about sweethearts, we want to shout out one of our sponsors, William Farquay Audio. Snoopy, we love you, brother, and we're
Captain.
We wouldn't have these mics without you and a lot of other gear, and we just want to share some love to you, let you know that we're thinking about you, and we hope you're doing well, man.
Yeah, you need a little audio setup, do a little mid-sized rock and roll show that Snoopy can handle it. He's a dear friend. He is my weekly lunch friend. You know, you got one of those friends in your life, you got to have one of those. The guy you go get lunch with and you just know all the tricks and there's like an unsaid language there. He's like, I don't even know how to explain him. He's a total brother. He's the captain. Just an incredible guy.
So much respect for him, man. He's opened up his heart to all of us here, so always appreciative of him.
He loves you guys.
Also, we just got ready for this Campo Kaizu benefit that's going to be happening over the weekend.
Yeah.
Everybody was all hands on deck today, just knocking out 3 different rigs, getting the trucks loaded, so it was fun.
This is a really good thing. This is something that we've participated in for years. My brother has this great relationship with this really great cause, the Camp Kaizu people that help sick children, and it's kind of like a summer camp. And they go there and they just get a lot of love and a lot of attention, and a lot of physical stuff. But last year, this is something we've done for years with them. Last year during the big rush of fires in California, it burned to the ground.
Yeah, ate up their whole compound.
And that's
sad.
Rough. So the mission to raise funds for this very, very worthy cause is on blast, and we're going a little bigger and bringing a big show. So hopefully it'll be a really great and well-attended event.
Absolutely, and we did it last year through COVID on the set here.
Yeah, that's right.
I think
it did pretty well.
It did.
It was before the fire, though, I believe, wasn't it?
No, that was for the fire as well.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I have a terrible memory.
Because it's just like any other summer camp, but specifically for these kids.
Yeah.
They build the fondness of just going there. The family has, set a little expectation that it's going to happen every year.
Well, I think the idea too is to give the family a little break, because having children with special needs is very, very. It's a full-time job, and it can be very difficult. And so this gives the parents a little bit of a break too. Some outside folks can get in and help and put a little something in the mix and I think they stay there for quite some time during the summer. So it's a really cool thing.
Yeah, and one thing we didn't think about, I'll try to add into one of the comments on Facebook and YouTube, is if we have a link that you can donate to, I'll try to hunt that down. But
that'd be great. Yeah.
Right on. Also, this earlier on the week, we did some View Audio Technica rigging classes.
Yeah.
All of us at Sound Image, we set up a little rig, flew it up, taught everybody the angle, the dangle.
Yeah, yeah.
It was an awesome time. I think everybody really learned a lot. We really support that system. We really like View. We just want to give them a nice hand in here.
Well, we had a couple new heads in the mix, and because we use certain rigs in the house, a rider comes through, we'll match the rider. We're very good at that. We have a large system here at Sound Image. But in this house, we do run with a couple certain rigs as just standard fare. And so when new heads come around, we want them to know how to fly it. They might have some VTX experience or some Adamson, whatever. Not all rigging's the same. Not all hardware works the same. And so, yeah, that was a very well attended and good class. Thought it turned out well.
Yeah. And our producer, Mike Brown over here, just got back from a live recording session in L.A. For the band Otto.
Yeah. Who's Otto?
Otto, I think, is the Sons of Metallica's band.
Yeah, more or less. It's like a bunch of rock stars kids bands, but these kids actually shred like Robert Trujillo's kid, who's basically just like a little miniature Robert Trujillo. Like, it's the hair, the holes, the way he stands, and holds his bass, the whole thing. He's just like, he's that kid. And yeah, he shreds. It's kind of a thing. And so Mikey's been doing that. Greg Price is out as took over for Big Mick doing front of house. Greg turned that over to Mikey and said, hey, can you help out with this? With his connection there. And so, Mikey's got a great ear, man. It's funny. He's back there, operating cameras and doing a switch because that's not really what he does. What he really does is he mixes big rock bands.
Fucking total badass audio really guy, dude.
Yeah, some of the nicest compliment I ever heard Greg Price say was about something that that Michael had mixed. I never heard him. It was an extraordinary compliment. It was like a huge deal. To me, it was to hear Greg Price say that about something that, a 30-year-old, the he's got juice, man. That kid's good.
All right, so we want to hear it when it's done, Mike. We got to hear your work now.
Oh, that's just mandatory. That shit's happening.
We'll see if we can post it, baby. Yeah. Maybe we can share it to the audience.
It's the ultimate audio Pepsi challenge.
Oh, and of course, I don't have my Guinness on here because I thought that might be weird on set, but happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody.
What are you kidding? When you're not here, my good friend, Bernie Broderick, loudspeaker designer legend, sits there and gets hammered. It's Baker's choice, man.
I think I got to grow the ponytail out a little bit more for that to happen.
I'm going to tell Bernie to watch this episode. He's going to love it.
Well, he's badass. He's not biased towards any sort of opinion. He's the
That's why he's always at the speaker shed. He does the host the speaker challenges, the shootout, sit down at NAM and
Absolutely,
LDI.
that's how I met him.
They bring Bernie in because Bernie is a god, and he's designed for L Acoustics, Adamson, EAW, and so he can literally stand there in front of 15 different rigs and somehow talk his way through it when people kind of that you've been to these, you know what I'm talking about, and Bernie handles it like a pro, man, and you never get the sense that he's like in anybody's corner. He's just talking the science of throwing sound, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, Bernie's good. Well,
you just picture, I've done this shoot for a couple companies, and that's how I've met him. But it's always the conversation like, what's the hardest part of this? And it's like, well, everybody wants to be louder. It's really just like, how do you balance a bunch of fucking dudes like that that just want to make their system louder?
Well, he rolls in with a kind of a Canadian approach. So he just knows how to wiggle through things. You're not going to get Bernie in a corner. It's just not happening. He's just going to keep that cool.
Smoother than a cheese curd, man.
Yeah, that's right.
Love it.
That's the man.
Quick shout out to P-Bone. He's been doing our lights. He's about to go off, and we're not allowed to speak about it. But we love you, Al, and we respect you.
Al Pettibone is one of our LDs, and he does most of the heavy lifting. He put in our Ukrainian Respect lighting colors, our blue and gold, or yellow, whatever that flavor is. But yeah, there's some horse shit that's going on overseas right now. So that's about. But Al's we're very lucky to have Al. Al's worked with a lot of great bands, Incubus and Primus and stuff like that. Who knows he's got some plans coming up in the future. We'll probably talk about it when he finally accepts whatever he's going to do next. But yeah, he keeps himself busy with some cool projects for sure, and he helps us out doing this. So we really appreciate him. Thank you, Al.
Thanks, Moth. You're the best.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to be here next week, unfortunately. I have a little run out with Laura Monroe's band. Mm-hmm. We're going to do a show in Miami, then go to New York, Philly, and D.C., so it should be a good run. But I'm
1,
going to
2,
be
3,
bumming.
4. Yeah, that'll be sweet. Yeah, you'll enjoy that.
Yeah, I'm going to miss the show, but you know what? I know you guys will kill it. I'm going to watch it.
What time frame are we talking about here? How long?
Just a week.
Okay. All right, cool. Well, I asked Bernie because I knew you were going to turn it up missing for one.
See,
so
you get the burn. You get to see how smooth this cheese curd is, dude. He's a badass.
He's really gonna love watching this show.
I'm probably gonna die later. It's all right.
It's Bernie. He'll have me do something bad to you. He doesn't really put hands on like that.
That's true. I love you, Bird.
Yeah, Bernie's one of the best.
That's it for me, man. I knocked off this cue card quick for you today.
You did real good. It's 10 after. I've got a heavy slot here. We've got a wonderful guest this evening. Thank you, brother. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your help. Want to shout out one more time to Mikey's thing here, which of course is Devo Puss.
Devo Puss.
We love it when you guys send us weird shit and we turn it into weirder shit. So thanks. Okay. Thanks for being here, man.
Anytime, brother.
Listen, we reach out. We get lucky here. Last week we had a crazy, incredible guy on. This next week we've got Chad Olich Jr. on, who's extraordinary. This week we don't wedge him in and give you like yucky, smushy stuff in the middle. We just keep bringing the heat. Tonight is absolutely no exception. Our guest tonight is one of the most accomplished mix engineers in the business. He's mixed for a lot of folks. Motley Crue, Enrique Iglesias currently. That is a very big tour. I believe they just won the Best Latin Tour award. Very, very cool. He's got his own podcast with a good friend, Eddie Kaipo, called Sound Ninjas. They're reaching into their second season, which is really cool. If you put these things together, it takes a lot of work. I think he's currently on the February 2022 cover for, they've got a cover story on Live Sound International with him and his crew. You got to check it out. It's very cool. It is the one and only Brad Divens. How you doing, Brad?
I'm doing good. How about you, Vince?
Oh, man.
Thanks for having me on.
Buddy, I've been following your career for quite some time. You've accomplished a lot of things. You really put in the work. You kind of have that standard, that interesting story of a lot of roadies where we come from the music, and then when we end up working in the music. And you're just covering all the bases between, your studio work, your live work, which you're, incredibly well known for, but also you come from this, legitimate rock and roll. You play. You got a great singing voice. You have a bunch of good stuff. I highly recommend people reach out to you and check your sites out. What was it like coming up with the band Rothschild? Now I checked in on this. So you guys were kind of killing it, man. You had some moments there.
We did. We had quite a few moments.
Yeah.
I think we were together for, 5 years, and then we finally got signed. We did 2 records for Atlantic and, did some tours. We toured with Testament. We toured with Pantera.
Cool.
It was on the way up.
Yeah.
Which is what I set out to be in the first place. I wanted to play music and I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal.
Yeah.
And there was none of this other thing was involved.
Yeah.
And, it just didn't work out so well.
Well, at what point did you decide? I use this metaphor, and I mentioned to you earlier, a minute ago, but kind of go from trying to be, mined gold, which is a really hard thing to do. We're trying to be a rock star, and Lord knows you guys had the chops. I mean, you guys, it was a very real project, a real band. It's just that luck factor sometimes is a big part of it. I mean, we've both been on the way up, worked with a lot of those bands. So I don't even know how many that I thought, why is this band not bigger? This band should be killing it right now. It's sometimes the audience just doesn't catch up with the greatness of a thing. And I highly recommend you guys go out and check out this Rothschild project from Brad. It's really good. It's fun music. If you like guitar-driven, guitar-based music, like you said, it can kind of fit somewhere in the pantheon of the Testaments and Panteras. It's really fun, and it's available. I mentioned on the intro that you work hand in hand with Eddie Kaipo out on the Ricky Martin Enrique Iglesias tour, which is one of the most successful tours going out there. But I also know that you have this really cool podcast you guys do together, entering its second season. I think you just posted your first episode called Sonic Ninjas. Tell us about that. Sell it to me.
Well, I think that came about because of the pandemic.
Yes, sir.
Eddie and I were trying to figure out what we could do. We had a lot of downtime, and we decided, hey, maybe we'll just try this thing out and see, if people want to listen to what we talk about. We can talk about mixing. We can talk about, our philosophies on, microphones and consoles and gear and how we deal with the artist and just all sorts of different topics. I mean, because him and I have been working together with Enrique now for almost 8 years.
Wow.
And so we get along really well. And the camaraderie between the two of us it's really, it's good. And so the whole play, the interaction between the both of us when we would just get to talking to stuff was, people found it entertaining. And we're like, well, maybe we'll just see how this thing goes. And of course, we don't do as many episodes as we should, because we both get busy doing things. And then we're like, well, what are we going to talk about? Well, we talked about drums last week. And, it's like sometimes you think that the things that you talk about might seem boring to you because it's what you do, but other people find it interesting because, they want to know what you do and they want to learn how to do what you do, or maybe where you got to be where you're at, and how you got there.
Yeah, no, that's what.
So it was born out of the pandemic.
Yeah, it's a lot of people went that lane, and there was some really good things that came out of it. The Pooch Rybold thing is super good. The Wrong End of the Snake things. I think Chris Leonard really doubled down in his thing with Signal to Noise, which is a wonderful podcast. Yeah, and some of them have turned out really well. So you don't have any organized thing. There's no like division of labor. It's like you come up with some topics. He'll do the marketing. You just kind of come at it free form and just get in there like very spontaneously. And
yeah, he's the one that likes to be organized, and I'm the one that likes to show up 10 minutes before the show and say, okay, let's go.
Yeah.
And he does all the planning and all the, making sure that everything's working right and we look good and the latency's good. Everything sounds good. And I'm just like, let's just talk.
Yeah. No, it's tricky.
But,
I've had that.
We'll try to get at doing more of those.
Yeah. Maybe there's a happy mix of both, trying to embrace both, both of those sides of your personalities. I know that with my original co-host, which was Bernie Broderick, I was the Eddie Kaipo of the two, and he was definitely the you. And I found we were just lingering and getting lost all the time. It was tricky. It was very tricky.
I'm definitely somewhere in the mix of patch guy, stagehand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's...
Yeah, it's rightful.
You've heard from the co-host. He will accept those monikers, right? Patch guy, stagehand. I always figured like it doesn't matter whatever level you achieve in this game. And Greg Price will take me to the mat on this one. You've seen him do it right here in one of the 2 or 3 shows he's been on. About that, we're just roadies. It's just a kind of roadies. But I know Greg hates that. He's a mix engineer, and if anybody could make that claim, it's Greg Price. But yeah, I don't know. Where do you stand on that? Do you have do you take personal umbrage to the term roadie?
I don't get offended by roadie. I still look at myself as a musician, even before being a mix engineer.
Yeah, totally.
That's because that's the background that I come from.
Yeah.
I didn't ever set out to be a mix engineer. I set out to play music.
Yeah, but I think that influences how you engineer, though, doesn't it? How you create your mixes.
I think it. Yeah, because every time that I mix or that I recall, being asked to mix several different artists back in, when I first started out, and it would be anything between Cyndi Lauper and Linkin Park. And, it's a wide variety of styles of music. And people were like, well, how do you know what to do with that music? And I'm like, well, I just listen. I mean, once you listen to the music, it kind of puts itself together. Because I can play guitar and I can play bass and I'm a singer and you just kind of know where you want things to sit.
Yeah.
And it's really, to me, it's just never been that complicated because it's really just comes down to a matter of listening.
It's well said, and I couldn't agree with you more. I think that the best of us are doing exactly that, almost feeling, and then reinterpreting with the technology. But there's no 2 ways about it. And if folks want to see some of your amazing output, they can go over to your page on Facebook. You have a bunch of cool clips up of you in your studio with different folks making their magic happen, and of course playing along with them. The Arrival, is that a band that you're in?
No, that was it was a local band of some friends of mine, and they were working on a project, and this was at the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm pacing around the house angry because I'm not going to go out and on the road and mix and, go tour. And my wife's like, you got a studio in the basement. And I'm like, oh, yeah. and so I mean, one thing led to another. I asked a drummer friend of mine to come over, and we started jamming, and we recorded some songs and put them up,
Yeah.
and then my friends in the Arrival said, "Hey, we'd like you to mix our record." And when they brought me the project, it was a lot more involved than just mixing. It ended up being a whole lot of recording,
Yeah.
which when I set my studio up in the beginning was just to mix. I'm like, I need to set something up so when I'm off the road, I have something to do. And once they got in here, we started recording. I'm like, oh, I need to get some outboard gear. And,
Yeah.
then we started, getting some amps and guitars and all sorts of things in here. And it just turned into a really fun project. And then after doing that record, then another friend of mine who's the lead singer in Kix asked me about doing a solo project. And so we did the same thing. The guys came in here and just went at it. Spent a lot of time, recording and singing and playing and mixing and having fun.
Yeah, no, it looks like you really enjoy yourself. You've got some cool videos where you can see you kind of getting it with a band. And I know it's from personal experience, that is a really a fun time, especially when everything kind of gets in the pocket and lines up. It's a really sweet moment.
Yeah, well, what I realized was during the downtime, I went from playing to mixing. And when I started mixing, I stopped playing for whatever reason. Whether it was I was frustrated with the music business, and now I'm doing something that I seem to be pretty good at because people want to keep hiring me, so I just keep doing it.
Yeah.
And so the playing just kind of fell by the wayside. And for the longest time, I'm like, okay, I'm a mixer now. This is where I'm going to be because the being a musician didn't pan out. And once I had the downtime to where I wasn't mixing anymore, I started playing and I realized, like, this is what I love to do. Like, why did I ever stop playing music?
It's really fun. Yeah, it makes you feel a little
'Cause
young.
It's a big part of who I am. I started playing music when I was 9 years old. I picked up the acoustic guitar.
Wow. Wow.
Just-
Yeah, so you got that back into your game, though.
and it just brought it all back full circle.
And that's fantastic.
And now I'm embracing it. I'm not going to let it go again this time. So
Good.
Now being a musician is much a part of me now as mixing it.
Well, I want to get into Linkin Park and Cyndi Lauper and all this good stuff, him. But just to tie on to what this moment we're having over the love of mixing, the love of playing. But I think you've recently, because you just survived a pretty serious, in your relatively recent history, a pretty serious medical procedure where you had to have a heart operation. And I can only imagine, and having, again, follow you for quite some time, I see the grateful kind of nature that you approach life in, the gratefulness for you having a great spouse and then a great job and, all these things. So does that, well, first of all, congratulations on pulling through that. You look wonderful. Any secrets, anything we should know? How did you come out the other side of it?
I came out the other side really well. It was something that was totally, unexpected, obviously. I had started feeling a little winded and not feeling quite right, but I just thought it was it was because of just sitting around not doing anything, because I'm so used to being on the go all the time.
Sure.
And went in for the stress test and failed the stress test, went straight to the emergency room.
Yeah.
And, went from maybe I'm going to have a couple of stents to, oh, you need quadruple bypass surgery.
Damn.
All within a matter of a few hours.
Yeah, you just hit the gas. That was
And I mean,
tricky.
that morning, the morning before I left to go do the stress test, I was sitting in here in my studio with a mix up. And I was working on it because I was going to finish it. And I'm like, oh, I'll finish the mix when I come back from the stress test.
Right.
Well,
No.
7 days later, I came home from the hospital, and I think maybe 2 weeks after I got home, I managed to come downstairs to come in the studio, and the mix was still up, and
Wow.
everything was just all ready to go.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had it in my head that I wasn't going to be in the hospital that long because I had to keep moving. I had things that I wanted to do. I wasn't done yet. And I think that just kept me going. And, everybody said, hey, the moment you come out of surgery, the best thing you can do is get up and walk around.
Yeah.
The quicker you get up and move around, the quicker you're going to get out of the hospital. And I was walking around. As soon as I opened my eyes up out of going through the night in intensive care,
Okay.
I'm like, hey, let's go for a walk.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, what? You want to go for a walk? I'm like, yeah, let's go. I got shit to do.
That's right.
You can't be sitting around here.
No.
And a couple weeks, 3 days after the surgery, I went home, and then I went to see my surgeon. I think it was 4 weeks after that, and he cleared me to pretty much go back to doing everything but driving.
Yeah.
And I couldn't lift anything heavier than a gallon of milk. And when I realized that one of my Les Pauls in here was like, he said a gallon of milk was like 10 pounds or 9 point something.
Yeah, about 9.
I'm like, oh, I got a Les Paul that's like 8 pounds. I'm gonna walk downstairs and strap that on. And that's what I did. I mean, I kept the mindset that I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
This is just I'm very thankful that I didn't have a heart attack, that they caught it in time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I always thought that I ate healthy. Yeah, I had my moments of drinking here and there, but I've come to realize, actually, I think my wife realizes this more than I do. That stress plays a big part
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
in our body and how it responds to things. And when I think back about the past years of doing what I do and how I reacted in situations where, maybe you walk in and the PA is not right, or you walk in and it's not even up in the air at all, or, the logistics of the show just isn't what you want it to be, and you get stressed out about it.
Mhm.
And that goes on for years and years and years and years. And it just builds up over time.
Yeah.
And I think people in our industry really need to be aware of the stress factor.
Well, that's
'Cause
a really great note to speak to folks about. I mean, you've been doing this for quite some time. You're at a very high level in the game. And do you think this is like I mentioned to you earlier before we went on, mental health issues started popping up real quick amongst our peers early on in the COVID thing. And I think, we're pushed so hard, and then it's a little bit addictive chasing the tours and being on the road. That has its own weird nomad draw to it. So do you think we're doing enough? I know we my brother, George Edwards, and people like Bob Powers, rigging legend, John Del Rio, started a page called Loving Hands for Stagehands, just for a place for stagehands to kind of get some information and stuff. Do you think we do enough in our industry to, dispel the myth that there's something wrong with, when you have mental health issues?
I mean, I'm not sure I don't know that we do enough for that. I mean, I think everybody, has trauma in their life, and there's things that they need to deal with. And certainly what we do on the road is unlike, a typical 9-to-5 job.
Yeah.
We're pretty much like carnies.
Yeah.
We
exactly.
travel from town to town and set a show up and, entertain people and tear it down and go on to the next town. And I don't think you ever really think about, what do you go through in the day, mentally, to get to the point in the evening where the show happens.
Yeah.
All people see is, that hour and a half or 2 hours that everybody's having a good time, and the sound's working great and the lights, and it's all good. But nobody sees the other times of the day where you might have been sitting in front of house, 10 minutes before showtime, and all of a sudden some, digital noise comes flying out of your console that you have to deal with right then and there.
Console
and the level of stress that goes through,
it's insane.
That you go through in that. And we've had those instances, traveling with Enrique and going some of these places that we play, not logistically, they're not always, what they should be. And we deal with it, make the most of it.
Yeah.
And the show happens.
That tour is
Every
really
time.
an international tour, right? I mean, you really go everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is. But, there are a lot of things that I think people could, take into consideration for people in our industry and, what we go through. People on the outside looking in can say, oh, man, you got a great job. You're lucky. It's, looks like a lot of fun. It's like, well, yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I am lucky. But it's
also
very stressful.
Yeah, you're also first one in, last one out. If something heavy may fall on you. You may get electrocuted. Probably haven't slept for a while. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So,
And
bunch
they,
of stuff.
you know, they try to make sure catering is good and,
Yeah, it's
you
gotten a
know,
lot
you
better.
try to eat healthy and,
Yeah.
you know,
No,
it's gotten better.
The
And then
pizza
you
and
got the after
flatbread
show
is
food that,
certainly less and less. You know, the old days of pizza and flatbread and,
right.
you know, Yardbird. But yeah, it's one of
Yes,
those
it
things.
is.
Um, I gotta
Yep.
dig around in your amazing history. You know, you've worked with such great bands, and you know, and a lot of long runs. You went to 5 years with Linkin Park earlier in their career. I think this was before. I think Brad took over that one from you. I'm not exactly sure, but I know Brad.
Yeah, Pooch did.
Oh, Pooch took it, and then Brad
Yeah,
got it.
Pooch did.
Yeah, because
Yep.
I remember Brad came
Mhm.
in the day he wasn't supposed to be here. His office is right over there too, and he came in the day after the incident with the singer, and I caught a glimpse of him and yelled across the room, you know, what are you doing here? Because I hadn't heard yet, and that
Mhm.
affected him. That really kicked his ass a little bit. He's a man who's kind of
Yeah.
impervious to a lot, but did you see that one coming?
No, I didn't see that one coming at all.
Yeah, that was
When I
super
started
weird.
with Linkin Park, I mean, I was in a bus with those guys. It was the band and the crew on the same bus.
Yeah,
You know, we rode everywhere together, and you know, we worked in clubs, and I was with them in the beginning and watched the thing grow.
Yeah.
You know, I'd hang out in the dressing rooms, and we would hang out. You know, it wasn't like I worked for them. It was like we were we were friends,
like a team.
and we would hang out.
Yeah.
And Chester I mean, he was always such a fun-loving guy, always
Sweetheart of a guy.
smile on his face, and
Yeah.
he's like, "Hey, Divvy, what's going on? You know, what's happening today?" And you know, he's always upbeat and jovial. And when I heard that, I'm like, man, I would have never thought ever that Chester would be the guy who would take his own life.
Super
Never.
weird. Yeah, that one was weird.
I was working with another band that was actually opening for Linkin Park when I got the gig with Linkin Park. And Chester would come over to this band's bus and hang out. And I'm like, who's this guy coming? You know, oh, that's Chester Bennington from Linkin Park. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. And we'd shoot the shit, and you know, like, okay, I got to go. And just one of those guys, you know, you just never think.
Yeah, no, I think some people, if they could embrace the concept that you might be having a sense of a kind of a permanent solution to a temporary problem. And I think that's
Yeah.
something, you know, just if you could, that concept of that it could feel really horrible right now, but breathe, give it a minute. And then time has got this weird cathartic thing. And I'm talking sometimes it's only hours that make the difference. So yeah, that was super sad. And it's where the line effects, that whole thing was a rough one. But I know you did good with them for 5 years, and
Yeah.
you certainly brought them up in their early days to be a real big concern. I mean, Linkin
Yeah.
Park, when that happened, just before they were really at the top of their game.
Yep. I mean, we had a blast.
Yeah, that had
It was
to
a
be a lot
good
of fun.
time watching it grow and
Yeah, that's
turn
always
into
good.
what it turned into, and did a lot of big shows, and I learned a lot. You know, when I got Linkin Park, I had only been mixing for 3 years, I think.
Well, just 22 years
It was
ago.
very
yeah.
quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 99 when I started. I mean, we didn't really touch on this because I kind of stopped, but coming from playing to mixing, I moved from Maryland to LA
Mhm.
to join another band that was signed, and we were going to make a record. And of course, the record's done. The label says, "Oh, we're not gonna put this record out." And I'm like, "Okay, great. Now I'm in Los Angeles. What am I going to do now?" And my manager at the time said, "Hey, would you think about tour managing?" I'm like, "Oh, I think maybe I could do that." And so he set me up with a band to go meet who was doing a gig on Lollapalooza second stage.
Mhm.
And so I'm in the meeting with the manager, and he's like, you know, going through my roles and what I was going to be, you know, involved with. And he's like, "Oh yeah, we need somebody to mix. Can you do that?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I can do that." And I'd never mixed on a professional level ever. You know, maybe I did when our bands were playing and we'd have to, you know, rent our PA to some local band and go out and make $50 or whatever. But,
Sure.
you know, and that was a gig that I took strictly to pay the rent. But one gig led to another, and I kept taking them because people liked what I did. And they're like, "Hey, can you come work with my band?" And, you know, then I ended up in that position where it was a 3-band bill with Linkin Park as the middle. No, they were the opening act.
Wow.
and then I think it was a band called Head PE,
Yeah, I remember him.
and then I think it was either POD or Papa Roach. It was
Gotcha.
one of those bands that were headlining,
Yeah.
and I'm doing Head PE, and
Yeah.
then Linkin Park lost their front of house guy, and their manager's like, "Hey, can you mix us?" And because I was friends with their manager because I'd done Monster Magnet, who was managed by Rob McDermott and Andy Gould.
Right.
And yeah, I'm like, "Yeah, Rob, I'll do Linkin Park until you get somebody." And then one day somebody said, "Hey, Linkin Park's selling 50,000 records a week." I'm like, "Hey, Rob, you want me to stick around for a little bit?"
I can hang.
And that was kind of the turning point
That was
for
a
me
tiger by
as
a
a
tail
mixer.
situation for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, I said yes all along. All along the way, I just kept saying yes,
Yeah,
and then I just figured it out as I went along. I asked a lot of questions. I watched Greg Price and Brad Maddox.
they're
on
good
that
folks to
on that
learn from.
Ozfest tour that Linkin Park was on.
That's
Yeah.
right. Yeah. Yeah. No,
Yep.
I think I was
That's
talking.
it's kind of crazy when I look back on that.
I was talking to Greg Price, and I was talking about that. Just he had stopped in a couple days ago on his way to Europe to do the next leg of Metallica, and we were talking about that you and Chad were coming on respectively, and he said, "Oh yeah, I remember coming up with that guy. He was doing second stage work, and he had a great work ethic." That's what he said about you. I thought it was pretty cool. I was glad to see that he started blowing up and making it big. And, it's an interesting observation by Greg Price. He's kind of a legend and a badass, and he absolutely remembered you from the Ozfest thing. Yeah. And Chad, too, because I guess Chad was doing somebody also on the Ozfest, and he had a very similar comment about him. It was just good to see guys kind of move up
when
the
I
ranks.
when I took over Linkin Park, I think I brought Chad in to do Head PE.
Yeah, that makes
So
perfect
Chad
sense.
and I knew each other back then.
Yeah.
We both came up in the ranks.
Well, you've certainly both done incredible things with the time that you've had. Let's talk about a really iconic American rock band, working with Bob Seger and the Silver Bullet Band. I mean, this is kind of the bread and butter of the heartland of rock and roll. What was it like working with Bob? I think he's just talking about maybe doing a last tour and hanging it up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think that was just
working with Bob I think it was surreal working with him because I grew up on that music and I remember hearing those songs when I was 15, 16 years old. And I remember they flew me out to Detroit. Bob was rehearsing in a club out there, and they wanted to bring me out to meet Bob and check things out. And there was like an XL4 sitting there and a bunch of outboard gear, and I just started dialing things up, and Punch Andrews, his manager, was there, and he walks over and he's standing there by me, and I'm I got the headphones on because Bob's playing. It's pretty loud in there, and I'm trying to dial a mix up in headphones. And I think it sounded pretty good. And I just I look at Punch, and he's looking at me, and I'm like, I just take the headphones off and hand them to him. He puts them on and smile and hands them back. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Must be doing something right. And
right.
then, I met Bob and met everybody in the band, and Bob was just so down to earth. And it was a band of great players with great music.
Yeah.
And it was, I don't know, it was, dial some input gain up, throw the faders up, and let the band play.
Right.
And
the source is that good.
That was one of those times where I was really felt like mixing as a musician.
Right.
Because I'm working with a band of, just a rock band. And I'm playing the leads, and I'm, Bob's singing, and I'm air drumming, and I knew every little part to every song.
Yeah.
It was just such a great time.
No, he's kind of a national treasure. It's I know some people don't get it, but Bob Seger's got amazing catalog of songs, and he's just a singular voice.
Hit after hit.
Yeah, he's kind of got a CCR vibe going on, where just couldn't really do much wrong when he was in the peak of his thing.
It was a great time. I loved it.
Oh, I bet you had a lot of fun with it. I'm fascinated by here at Sound Image. We do a lot of training. We keep up on the training as best we can. As you know, this is a moving target in our business. You know, as new equipment comes out, as new gear, and you just might go between different boards and different rigs. And it, you know, the more you know is always the better. I want to ask you about your master classes you teach. I noticed you did one, and there must have been 100 people. I mean, you really have well-attended master classes on mixing. I noticed you did one in at the Kennedy Center in D.C. I mean, dude, if you're going to be teaching somewhere, that is an
Right.
extraordinary venue to be teaching those classes. It was fascinating. Can you tell us about it?
Yeah, you know, I came up with the idea for the class because I wanted to put something together. I actually wanted to start doing it. I was looking for something to keep me busy during the day, you know, while I was on tour. And I thought maybe I can put some sort of class together where people could come in, I can sit at the console and I can just talk about what I do and how I got to be where I'm at. And then I struck up a relationship with JBL, and I was out to lunch one day with one of the guys there, and I think it was Greg Jones, and we were talking, and so I just threw my idea out there. I'm like, you know, I got this idea. And he's like, man, sounds great. Let's go with it.
Wow.
I'm like, okay, cool. And so my idea was, at first, he's like, you know, you can use whatever console you want. At the time, it was an S6, and, you know, you can do the class on that if you want. And I'm like, okay, that's cool. But then the more I thought about it, I'm like, you know what? I want to make this class about mixing, not about the gear that I use. I want people to realize that you should be able to mix a show on a Mackie if that's what you're given. And so I put together the three of the bands that I'd worked with that were different types of music. There was Him, which was a band from Finland, straight up rock band, kind of gothic. Then there's Garbage, which is like everything, all kinds of things going on in Garbage. And then there's Enrique, which is completely different than, you know, Garbage or Him.
Night and day, really, yeah.
And I would take a track from each one, basically show how the process, whether you mix a band like Him, Enrique, or Garbage, is exactly the same. And that's kind of what I would teach in the class. Like, and I would literally have the same parameter set with the same sort of processing that I could go from each band, you know, one band to the next.
Fascinating.
Just bring up different Pro Tools tracks and show how it translated. And it was also my story of how I got to, you know, came from being a musician to being a mixer, and how I learned to mix and how I set up, you know, my layout on the desk for my workflow.
Your workflow,
and what works for me. And I tried to keep it simple, you know, and I would go through everything from, you know, input all the way to the fader, to effects, to, you know, groups, and, you know, the mix bus, all of it, processing in a very simplified manner in which people could understand, because I didn't come from a technical background when I started mixing. I came from, you know, strapping on a guitar or bass and screaming into a microphone. That was as technical as I got.
Right.
But I knew what I wanted things to sound like. I just didn't necessarily know how to get there.
Yeah.
And once people started showing me, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
So when I came up with the idea of the class, I wanted it to be so that anybody would take something away from it. You know, people that maybe are just thinking about, I want to be a mix engineer. Wow, here's this guy talking to me about how he did, you know, just said yes to the gig and he figured it out. And this is how he got to be where he is. And this is how he does it. People seem to gravitate towards it. And while I think maybe what I'm talking about is, you know, kind of simple and, you know, it's not really that exciting, people seem to, you know, they want to come and listen to what I say. So the Kennedy Center was like the pinnacle of the classes. It was the biggest one yet. And then, of course, the shutdown came, and then that was it.
That's tough.
You know, we haven't started back up since the shutdown, but we need to get back there because it was a lot of fun. And
yeah, and I think it's a service that.
And I think people, you know,
yeah, I mean, it's you know, Pooch does this, and Greg and Brad and a couple other folks, Jakubowski, I think Scamboloni. offer some insight, which, by the way, is a kind of a newer thing. Back in the day, this was unheard of. There was a lot of the old pros weren't trying to show you anything, or very little at least. But it's a great new development, and I've seen that your approach sounds unique, and I think it would be really something. You please let us know if you get that back going, because I'd be very interested in cycling a couple of our folks through. I'm sure the boss who makes those decisions, like my brother, I think he'd be very interested in that.
Oh yeah.
I wanted
mean,
to ask, you think you could do that for us? We would like that very much.
it's ready to go at any time. All you got to do is ask.
Yeah, man, we appreciate that.
We'll set it up. We'll set it up and make it happen.
You mentioned mixing for Garbage. Now, Garbage, of course, is Shirley Manson and Butch Vig and just a bunch of hotshots, really, a bunch of serious A1 badasses. Did you find it challenging to be in Butch Vig's orbit and not sweat like his interpretation of what you were doing? I mean, he's kind of credentialed, you know what I mean? He's kind of done a few things. Yeah.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I had the conversation with Billy Bush about the gig,
Yeah.
and we just talked about, we talked about music, and, we were just basically having a conversation because I hadn't gotten a gig yet. But after the conversation, I got the call that, okay, come on out. It's your gig. And I'm sitting in rehearsal. I've got a console, I got a Pro Tools rig, and I come in the first thing in the morning, the band rehearses, I record everything. I've got the CDs. I'm listening to the songs on the CD. I'm got the inputs that I just recorded, and I'm dialing things in to get them as close to the record as I can, but yet maintain the live feel, because it's not ever going to be exactly like it is on the CD.
No.
But I want it to be close. And there's moments that I want to capture. There was a song called Paranoid where Shirley has a filtered vocal tag. And Billy comes in one day. This is probably after it might be a week or so in. And he's like, hey, Butch wants to come in and hear something. He wants to hear Paranoid. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Just Butch.
But at the same time, I'm pretty confident. Exactly. Because I hadn't really had that much rapport with Butch. It had been with Billy up until then.
Yeah.
Billy and the other people and other guys and Shirley. And so I'm working on Paranoid. I know it sounds good. And I have this filtered cue that I do on Shirley's vocal. So I'm rehearsing it, because that's like, it's a moment in the song that when you hear the song, you hear that, you're like, yeah, that's the part.
Right.
So Butch comes in and he sits down and playing the song. And the whole time I'm thinking, man, what's he going to think? What's he going to ask me about? Is he going to want to know what I'm doing to his drums, parallel compression? Like, what am I doing? That part of the song comes up where I hit the filtered vocal for Shirley's line. And he jumps up and he's like, sounds great, Bradley. And he pats me on the back and he walks out of the room.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, wait, don't you want to ask me like what I'm doing to any of this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I thought that he was going to come in and start picking everything apart, or at least questioning what I was doing, because it's Butch Vig.
I bet you he knows that.
But all he really wanted
to, and he's too much of a gentleman to play that.
Well,
shit. Unless you were doing something wrong. I mean, I think
maybe
he probably said something then.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think what he wanted to come in and just hear what I was doing.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, his intellectual curiosity had been killing him, and to not bother you for a week shows that he's a good guy, and you can't say much more than just to let you do your thing and trust that they hired the right guy, and they did, obviously. But yeah, rolling around with Butch Vig like that nearby, the one you got a board, and you got knobs and faders, he's kind of good with those too.
Exactly.
Yeah, I imagine that was just a tiny bit stressful.
Yeah, I earned her trust early on, and it was a great thing. I mean, it was like the high point of my mixing career to work with them, just because of the caliber of musicians and the talent that they are. Really, really good. Billy and Butch and Shirley, all of them. It's just, I mean, I got to mix stuff for, B-sides and, broadcast and all kinds of things that I thought I was just going to mix the shows. Yeah. And then one day Billy comes in, he's like, hey, we're doing this Yahoo thing. This is when we're in rehearsals at North Hollywood. He's like, so make sure you record it. And after we were done, I'm like, okay, I got the tracks for you. You know, how do you want them? He's like, I don't want them. I'm like, well, aren't you mixing it? He's like, no, I'm not mixing it. I'm like, well, does Butch want it? Is he mixing it? No, he's not doing it either. I'm like, well, Billy's like, you're mixing it. I'm like, oh, okay. Cool. And that was like, I'm like, okay. I mean, I loved that. I was scared to death, but at the same time, I'm like, oh, this is so fucking great. I'm going to mix something for them.
Yeah, very cool.
You know, that they're going to use. And it's still out there. It's on my YouTube channel. Those 3 songs that I mixed.
Oh, I got to check that
out. With video.
With video.
It's like the high point.
Did you say with video?
With video.
Oh, yeah, I'm checking that out. That's
with video.
First thing. Yeah, I bet you that's cool as hell. Yeah, no,
yeah, those are the first 3 things that I mixed in rehearsal.
Absolutely amazing. You know, I mentioned earlier when you're coming in, you guys won the, it's not a small thing. You know, Polestar puts out their words. It's real stuff. They take into account everybody, what we're all doing. And you guys won the Enrique Iglesias, Ricky Martin. You guys won the Best Latin Tour of 2022. That had to be a good feeling.
That was a great feeling. I felt like it was a great tour. It was a great package between Enrique and Ricky Martin.
Yeah.
You know, it was 2 different,
makes a lot of
2
sense.
Latin artists, but 2 different types of shows. And I mean, everything from the production, you know, the sound system that I was able to choose, the lighting, all of it. It just made for great shows night after night. I mean, logistical nightmare for production. I mean, because literally everyone was working right up until doors. And a lot of times we would get, you know, I'd get to hear the PA for, you know, 10 minutes, and then I'd go through a line check and something quick, and then I'd turn it over to Ricky's guy. And, you know, it was a lot of stress, but it was, man, the room would fill up and the show would start and the people would be yelling and screaming and dancing and everyone's smiling. And you're like, man, this is such a great feeling to be involved in this.
Sure.
Mask or no mask, I don't care. This is great. And then to win the award, you know, it was a combined effort of everybody that put that tour on.
You had some stiff competition. Feeling. It was, you had Los Buques and what was it, Pitbull, and a bunch of really great touring acts.
Yeah, Los Buques, Pitbull.
Yeah,
he killed it. Congratulations.
It was a great show, though.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys really brought it. I've only heard it reviewed really well, and of course, you know, you guys got all this hired, you know, you and Eddie, and just a team of really highly qualified people. It can only be good. Working with Motley Crue around the 2010 area, you know, Motley. I've had some time with Motley, my brother and I, and they fully. It's one of the last real rock shows you're going to go to. You know, they bring it hard. What was your time like with Motley?
Well, you know, I was called to fill in, and of course I'm like, yeah, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did the first run of dates I did was a whole bunch of hockey arenas in Canada. And I remember the very first rehearsal, I think Frank Scambolone was out there with me.
Yeah.
He was systems engineer.
Frank was a systems engineer.
I'm glad you're here, Frank.
Right on.
Yeah. Frank and I go way back, and I love that guy.
He's he's wonderful.
And you know, we're going through everything. We're going through the inputs, and you know, the band's playing, and I don't think Vince was singing. I don't even think he was there. It was just the band. And I was like a kid in a candy store because I not that I didn't grow up on Motley Crue, but when I was playing music, Motley Crue was, you know, they were popular and it was big.
Yeah.
And so again, I knew every song and I knew all the parts.
Yeah.
And, you know, then Tommy comes back after the rehearsal, and he sits down with me, and he comes back with a couple of beers. And he's like, hey man, he's like, you got this? You good? You think you got this? I'm like, I got this. Yeah, don't worry, I got it. Like, I'm just trying to be as confident and, you know, as I can be. Meanwhile, Tommy Lee's come back to ask me, is everything good? I'm like, yeah, I got it. It's all good.
That's kind of a
line.
And
so we went through those run of dates.
That's like him saying hello to you, you know, you got this, everything good? You know, it's the Tommy, that's how he rolls. He's like an overgrown teenager. Yeah.
So we got through that run of dates, and then I got called back to do the last Ozfest. And then it was, I actually got you know, Robert Long was a production manager, and he brought me in I think maybe the first day to meet everybody. For some reason on the first run, it was just, down and dirty, hockey arenas, in and out, go home.
Yeah.
But this time I got to meet people, and it was nice to have that. It was a little bit of interaction. It wasn't anything major, but it was something,
Yeah.
to just sit down with each guy for a few minutes and let him give me his spiel on his band.
Right.
And I'm more than happy to listen to whatever the artist has to say about their music, because it's their music.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm
just there to make it the best it can be for the audience. I'm not trying to create something different out of what I'm given.
Yeah.
And it was one of those, I loved it. I heard mixed things about, oh, they can't play and whatever.
Oh,
I'm like, I don't give a
shit.
shit. It's fucking Motley Crue, and everybody can play. And I made sure you could hear every note that everybody played every night,
That was your job.
good or bad.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly.
As a band,
Nikki does a bass run. I want you to hear it.
Yeah, right on. Yeah, no, as a band, they super bring it, and sometimes Vince will have some struggles with singing, but that's a tough gig. Heavy metal singer at 55 is not the easiest job on the planet. But Mick Mars and Nikki and Tommy, we can't say it. It's freaking Tommy Lee, man. He's one of the top drummers in rock and roll.
Exactly. When I go back to my playing days, one of the first bands or second band that I was in, we covered "Looks That Kill" and "Shout at the Devil."
Yeah.
A couple of the early Motley Crue songs. And so when I'm mixing them, I'm like, fuck yeah, I'm mixing Motley Crue, and I'm fucking throwing a hammer down, and it's loud, and it's in
He's got
your
his
face.
foot on the gas.
And it was
Yeah.
exactly. And the guitars are up loud, and it's just again, mixing like a musician, like I'm playing that fucking guitar,
Yeah, I always thought Mick Mars was a kind of underrated dude, because he brings a really full, big, unique. He's Mick Mars. He's an extraordinary guitarist for a guy who kind of is statuary the way he does it. But man, if you're really listening to what he's doing, he's really bringing it. And it's a lot of fun. I bet.
Oh, his rig was monstrous.
Yeah, he's
that
not
rig
playing.
was so.
Yeah.
It was great.
The crew bringing it had to be
good times.
A great time. We're running up against the time, and I want as many people to see this as possible, because the analytics tell us they see it more of them come to it when it's 59 minutes or less. But you were out with the Cult, Tears for Fears, Jane's Addiction. You've done so many amazing things to get through it and have a 25-year career in the heart of this game. I would imagine, have learned some tricks, some ways, some survival tactics. Do you have any advice for the young people coming up in the game that want to kind of one day be like Brad Divens, want to follow a career path like that? Any tricks, any tips?
Yeah, the best advice I can give you is just keep your eyes open and pay attention to everything that goes on around you, and learn as much about the music business as you can, and the industry that we're in, whether it's back line, front of house, systems engineer, whatever it may be. And don't be afraid to say yes to anything that's presented to you, because the only thing that's going to hold you back is yourself. And if you don't say yes to something, you're never going to know. Had I not said yes that moment the guy said we need somebody to mix, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you right now. I might be flipping burgers or whatever, because my playing career didn't make it, and I didn't know where to go after that. I didn't have the balls to say yes to something. And that's the biggest piece of advice I can give, is don't be afraid to say yes, and don't be afraid to ask questions. Because there's people like me that are so willing to give you the answers and take the time to help you figure it out, because a lot of people helped me figure it out along the way.
Yeah, pay it forward. Yeah, you're absolutely
pay
right.
it forward.
And it's like I said a minute ago, it's more and more a thing that's happening amongst us, and that's really nice to see. Robert Scoville, Brad Maddox, Greg Price all help us out with our training, and it's eminently beneficial. You just can't lose with that. What's next for you, buddy? What do you got your plans? What's going on next?
I'm sitting in the studio mixing. I got some friends of mine giving me projects to mix. I'm thinking about the next little, thing that I can record and sing and put out.
Yeah.
And, we may do some shows this summer with Enrique if the world hasn't blown itself up by then.
Oh, yeah, good point. I forget about that. Yeah. Well, we hope and wish that for you. continued success and, you know, safe journeys and happy travels. We very much appreciate you coming on and sharing your experiences with us, man. Super appreciate it.
I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks for having me.
All right,
Good
Pat.
times.
All right, my friend. You be well. Take good care of yourself.
All right, you guys too.
Thanks, buddy. Brad Divens, everybody.
We need more guys like that.
Yeah, it's just down to earth and like straight shooter, and you know, there's a lot to be said for just bringing it nice and real, keeping it simple, stupid, and you know, letting the work speak for itself, because he's had an extraordinary career, and in 25 years, he's worked for some of the biggest bands. A lot of fun with that. Next week we got the amazing Chad Olich Jr. on. Chad, you heard Brad just tell us that, you know, they followed a similar career trajectory. Sometimes guys are well known for working in a certain milieu. In Chad's case, he's worked with all the big rock bands. I mean, it's just what he does. He's a rock guy. It's kind of like Greg Price. You know, Greg's always associated with Black Sabbath, you know, Ozzy, whoever, Metallica currently. But Chad's been out for as a TM and a front of house guy for Alice in Chains, Chevelle, one of my favorite bands, currently out with Fall Out Boy. I think he spent quite a bunch of time on that with those guys and the Weezer tour. But we're going to have him here next week. We're looking forward to it. He's a super interesting cat. You guys should come and check us out. We do this every Thursday at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We do it for you. So we're going to do it again next week. Thank you guys for helping me with this. And until we meet again, be kind and be good to each other. Good night. Yeah. Hey, that was good.